We're at the point in the year where for some NFL fans, it is already draft season. So as certain teams trend towards the toilet and towards the top end of the NFL draft, the perfect time to drop a new mock. ESPN NFL draft analyst Matt Miller, kind enough to join us today. His latest mock draft dropped yesterday, and I think the biggest alarm going off for everybody here, back-to-back Colorado superstars going 1 and 2 overall in your mock draft, Matt. So walk me through how you think this works out, where Shedeur Sanders ends up going number 1 as your top quarterback off the board, followed closely by two-way star and Heisman hopeful in Travis Hunter.
Yeah, they're spectacular players, and they deserve to be at the top. This is not about the hype of Coach Prime or any of that. These are really, really good football players who've earned that billing as top prospects in this class. Now, I think what's most interesting is in this mock draft, I had the New York Giants trading up to number 1 overall, where the Jacksonville Jaguars sit right now. And I think it's important to note that Coach Prime is going to be very influential in where his guys, as he calls them, where they land. I think if you're a fan of the Cleveland Browns or the Carolina Panthers or the New York Jets, you could probably cross these guys off your wish list, because I think they're going to look at favorable ownership situations. Say what you will about the New York Giants. The Merritt and Tisch families have owned the Giants since they became the Giants, basically. There's a lot of stable owners involved there. It is still reviewed as one of those great NFL franchises. It also helps that you have the New York media market, which would help a young player. But from a football perspective, this is what the Giants need. They need a restart. Obviously, they got Daniel Jones playing scout team safety this week. They need a restart at the position. Shedeur, with his accuracy, with his playmaking ability, would give them exactly what they're looking for. And then with Travis Hunter, I think the question is, where do you play Travis Hunter? I think from a financial standpoint, go play wide receiver. Don't put your 6'1", 185-pound body out there trying to tackle wide receivers who look like DK Metcalf and Deebo Samuel every week. Play wide receiver, make your $25 million a year, which is like $10 million more per year than the highest paid corner is. So I think it's a business decision, but an easy one if I'm Travis Hunter. I'll play a little nickel corner early in my career, but I think his future is at wide receiver.
So do you think Deion and Shedeur play the Archie Manning, Eli Manning game around the draft?
I think they could if they have to. And, we saw this last year with Marvin Harrison and Marvin Harrison Jr. He said, yeah, I'm not doing the combine. Also, I'm not doing a pro day. They controlled that situation, and it worked out just fine. He was still drafted very, very highly. So I think we'll see Deion get involved if he has to. If a team lands that first overall pick, like the San Diego Chargers did back in 2004, where Archie had to step in and say, hey, don't draft my guy. We're not going there. I think that's the situation where we could see Deion get involved. And this is the guy who famously, taking the Wonderlic test, right, raised his hand and said, what pick do you have? And the Giants answer, like, pick 9. He's like, I'll be gone by then, and got up and left. So it's not like he hasn't controlled his own draft process before, at least as far as the lore of Deion Sanders goes. So I think, yeah, we'll see him get involved. And some players have the leverage to do that. And I think having a father who's a Hall of Famer and a premier college football head coach gives you the leverage to be able to pull some strings that other players might not.
And I think with that leverage, some people weren't sure about that necessarily, just because, Matt, the way people talk about this quarterback class compared to last year's quarterback class is pretty staggering. Now, you have 4 going in the first round here, with Shedeur going number 1, Cam Ward at 4, Carson Beck at 18 to the Los Angeles Rams, and then Jalen Milroe at 28 to the Steelers. So overall, when you look at this class as a whole, how do they stack up to last year's class?
Not very well. Last year was elite with Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May going 1, 2, 3. Then we had 3 more guys go in the top 12 after that. I think if we were to take last year's class and compare it to this year's class, I would not rank Shedeur Sanders ahead of the top 3. I think he would probably come in somewhere closer to J.J. McCarthy for me. I had Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. following J.J. McCarthy. When you look at Cam Ward from Miami, who I had going to the Las Vegas Raiders in this mock, he's not going to be up there with the top 4 guys from last year. And certainly Carson Beck, who's had very much an up and down year. We need to see him finish strong. And then Jalen Milroe has the greatest traits of any quarterback in this class, or probably last class as well. But he's just still learning to put it together. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see him go back to Alabama to get another year of seasoning, especially as a pure passer. But these guys are not up there with last year's class. And is that a little unfair to do? Maybe, because these situations are just different. But I think it's also, we can look back now at the 2024 class and realize how special that group was. Already, three of those guys, the four who are playing, all look really, really good. And three are certainly in the Rookie of the Year running right now. So it was just a great year for quarterbacks last year.
So has this turned into, because you had the 6 quarterbacks going higher, you have the first, if Travis Hunter is an offensive player, you have the first 5 picks as offensive players. Then 6 through 15, save for one spot, is all defense. Remember last year, Latu was the first defensive player taken, 15, 16, 17 area. Is this more a defensive draft this year?
I think it is, especially the depth. And if we were talking about my big board today instead of a mock draft, my top player is Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan. And I have Mason Graham, the D tackle from Michigan, up there as well in the top 5. Abdul Carter, the defensive end from Penn State, is in my top 6. So in terms of rankings, it's a really good class for defenders. Mock drafts, just as you pointed out, they tend to go offense early. That's where the league is at right now with quarterbacks, wide receivers. But it is a really good year to need a pass rusher. I think we've had some weak defensive tackle classes in the past. This year, we're going to see a little bit of a rebound from that position group. There are some guys who have really played very well. Walter Nolan, I got to see him in person a couple weeks ago from Ole Miss. He looks fantastic. He looks like a top 20 pick. So this will be the year, I think, especially for those teams in the teens and 20s, this could be the year that you really load up on defensive players, because teams are going to overdraft quarterbacks, and we're going to see a run on players like, wide receiver, probably a couple offensive linemen as well.
DraftKings and DoorDash have teamed up to deliver NFL fans the action that they crave. Take a shot to play completely free throughout the season for cash prizes and DoorDash gift cards. Build a roster each week and compete against the field. Finish at the top of the leaderboard and you'll take home a lion's share of $5,000. Play now at DraftKings.com/DoorDash. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. Terms apply. See DraftKings.com/DoorDash for details. Must be an account holder to play. Yeah, offensive lineman was curious to me. I know for a lot of people going into the season, Kelvin Banks at Texas got talked about, Will Campbell at LSU. How do you sort of sort this class, and who is the best tackle, the best pass protector on the board for you?
Yeah, it's tough because we head into the year, and you mentioned this, with hype and expectations, because you look at a player in their sophomore tape and you say, okay, they're going to take the next step. They're going to be really, really good. Sometimes guys don't take that next step. I think that's happened to some degree with Will Campbell this year. He's playing with this upright. He looks like Ashton Jonty, but he's playing left tackle, right? He's standing almost straight up and down at left tackle, and it's hurt him. It's really affected his power in his lower body. It's affected, I think, his reaction time. He's struggled, and I've moved him down. There are NFL scouts that think Will Campbell's a guard at the next level because he has an arm length under 33 inches, which is kind of your baseline for offensive tackle play. Kelvin Banks, if you watch the Georgia game, he looks like a guard, not a left tackle. If you watch every other game this year, especially the Michigan game, he looked really, really good. So it's tough to kind of find the value with those players. Kelvin Banks is also only 6'4". We could see conversations about him getting kicked inside the guard. That could help players like Josh Simmons, the left tackle from Ohio State, who's actually out right now with a torn PCL, but looked great before the season started. It could help someone like Cameron Williams at Texas, who's a first-year starter at right tackle, but has amazing traits at 335 pounds, kind of like Amarius Mims did coming out of Georgia last year, where there's not a lot of tape, but the traits are really special, so you get excited about them. So the offensive tackle class, there are a lot of names. There are probably 5 or 6 guys that are carrying a fringe first-round grade right now, but none have that Penei Sewell type grade where you're confident from day one they're going to come in and be a dude. I think this year it's more about projection with all these players.
So you mentioned it before, and it's obviously a well-known fact. The quarterback position is overvalued. As Mike mentioned, you have 4 going in the first round, from 1 Shedeur to 28 in Jalen Milroe, and they may all move up. Who is the next quarterback or 2 that may get overvalued and put into the first round?
Yeah, I think you have to go back to Texas with Quinn Ewers. And Quinn is a tough evaluation because they run a beautiful timing-based scheme to Texas. When he's on time, he looks great. You can go back to the Michigan game. You can go back to some of the games last year. Certainly the Alabama game in Tuscaloosa was kind of his coming out party. Played flawless football that game. He looks like a first-round pick. But the problem with Ewers is when he has to operate outside of the structure of that offense, things break down. He's no longer a great deep ball thrower, which is something that he used to beat Alabama a year ago. That has fallen off from his game. I think some of it is in the era of transfer portal, Texas replaced their top 4 pass catchers. This year, you see a little bit of that timing being off with Ewers and players like Isaiah Bond or Matthew Golden. So a lot of that evaluation is going to happen from January to April to see these guys in private workouts, things like the Combine, the Senior Bowl. But I would say Ewers is next up. Drew Alar from Penn State is really interesting. Another player who has all the tools. 2023 didn't look great. 2024, you're starting to see it. He's putting it together in a new offensive system, starting to look more like a guy who could be a first rounder. But I'm kind of the hope that Alar goes back to Penn State, maybe gets a little more time under Andy Kotelnicki, and we see his game continue to elevate. But it feels like every week the internet anoints a new quarterback and then they fall off. It was Connor Wegman to start the year, then it was Garrett Nussmeier, and it's week to week. It almost feels like we're all waiting for that Jaden Daniels player to come maybe out of day 3 and elevate. I just haven't seen it happen this year.
Speaking of a difficult conversation we often have, running back value has been one of the topics du jour in sports talk radio for the last few years. You've got Ashton Jeanty, who is a Heisman hopeful still, running at the group of 5 level at Boise State, going 23rd to the Houston Texans here. When it comes to other first-round running backs that we've seen in the past, where does he stack up? Who do you compare this guy to when you watch him playing right now?
You know, he reminds me of someone who wasn't a first-round pick, but a third-round pick. He reminds me of Alvin Kamara because he's 5'9", but he's 215, 220 pounds. So he's got the low center of gravity, really good contact balance. Last year, they actually threw him the ball a decent amount, and he looked like a really good receiver out of the backfield. This year, they're just turning a hand in the thing to the guy because no one can stop him. So they're just sticking with what works. But he's really a 3-down player. He's a special running back with everyone in the stadium knowing where the ball is going. He has not been stopped at all this year. So he's special. I have him rated in my top 15. It's just hard to find a team, just like it was with Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. It's hard to find a team to say, okay, we feel like they will pull the trigger. I know a lot of people think the Dallas Cowboys could be that team. They can't run the ball. They've just ignored the position, it feels like. Could they be the team that does it? Right now, that would be at pick 9 overall. Maybe Dallas does it because who knows with Jerry Jones, he's going to do whatever he wants to do. It feels like running back value is something that his right-hand guy, Will McClay, would not really be on board with in the first round when they have so many glaring holes at other positions. But Jonty is special. And when you talk to scouts who've seen him in person, I haven't been able to yet, they say, like, hey, this guy's a top 10 pick. Just forget positional value. Who are the 10 best players in the draft? He's one of them.
So just about a minute to go. Deepest position in the draft?
I think his edge rusher is certainly up there. We could see a bunch of those guys fall off the board in the first round, but then there's really, really good value throughout rounds 2, round 3. As we start to see the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl rosters fill out, I get excited just watching some of these edge rushers because it is a really good group.
Yeah, certainly a lot to get excited about here. Notre Dame fans got to see Nick Scorton at the beginning of the year, who's been an absolute monster at Texas A&M, and who knows where exactly along the line he could even slot. It's a ton to get excited about. Mock draft season, always one of my favorite times of year. Thank you for getting it started early as we enter the holiday season, Matt. Always appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Again, you can check out his latest mock draft over on ESPN.com.